And we know the profit margins are super thin right now. And it doesn't look like a fast way out. So we know for the next couple of years coming here that we're going to have extremely thin margins, barring a black swan event that causes our grain or beef market to shoot to the moon.
Welcome to the Serve Ag podcast, guys. Told myself I had to record a podcast and publish a podcast every single week this year for the Atlas Media side of the business. And so here we are with Neil. We're driving back from the Kentucky Grain Growers Conference. For me, it had very little relevance to my life because I don't live in Kentucky and I don't grow grain.
And there wasn't a lot of tradespeople there this year.
Yeah, I talked to one company total there. I did get to meet the commissioner of agriculture for Kentucky, so that was neat. Seemed like a nice guy. Sought me out, shook my hand. Was like, oh, nice to meet you, high power individual in the USDA.
He is a great dude too.
Yeah.
He's a producer as well.
How long is he, like, how do you work your way into a position like that?
You know, I think Jonathan Shell is his name. Jonathan Shell is our new Kentucky Commissioner of Agriculture. And Jonathan started out, well, first, he's a cattle producer and greenhouse grower and agritourism guy. And using that platform, he got elected to the Republican side of the House of Representatives of the state of Kentucky. And he served in that capacity for a while. And I think he just kind of, he felt like he served his time, retired out of that position. And he's a young guy, he's younger than me, I would think. So I would say late 30s, early 40s. I really don't know, to be honest with you, but younger than I am. Served his time in the House of Representatives at the state level. Just decided, he went home to, just run his business. And I think he just started missing it and decided he was going to come back, hopefully in a higher level position, and started making a run for the ag commissioner position and successfully did it, running a farm and then driving across the state in his 1-ton.
Really?
So that's a pretty cool story. Jonathan, he drives a 1-ton diesel dually, just like he farms in every day, and traverses the state, meeting all kinds of people, all kinds of different farms, and he's done it through grassroots. He, achieved that agriculture commissioner position through total grassroots, just reaching out and shaking people's hand, going to their farm, and then also just going into the rural communities of the state, introducing himself and telling everyone he's a advocate for agriculture. And he's honest, an actual agriculture advocate. He loves farming, loves agriculture, and promotes it not only at our state's level, but at the national level.
Huh.
So cool dude.
So, like, what exactly is an agriculture commissioner? Like, so he's supervising USDA stuff?
He is. Anything, in the state level, USDA falls under his umbrella. In our state, the Commonwealth, he develops ag policy and regulation on the state level, but he also oversees anything that the Department of Agriculture at the state level oversees. So we're talking like in the state of Kentucky, that's gas pumps, that's grocery store scales, that's the scales at the granary, that's all the grains and different commodities produced.
Really?
I even heard him say today they're over the top of bounce houses in the state. So I think anything the state doesn't want to do in one of the other offices gets lumped onto the Commissioner of Agriculture office. It's a very important position in our state.
And, wait. Actually bounce houses.
Actually bounce houses. They regulate bounce houses in our state from his office. So not only is he doing, the major commodities, he's also regulating how your kids jump on the bouncy house at church on Sunday.
That is, I was telling someone today that, the biggest argument for paying taxes, and I pay my taxes, guys, but I am true heart a libertarian in the sense I think the government should probably try to stay out as much as it can as possible because the free market's awesome. That's just me. The argument's always like, well, the government takes care of our roads. Like, what are you gonna do without roads? And I was like, well, I live on a street that's barely been plowed in like 4 days and it snowed 2 feet. It's like, yeah, I pay them to take care of my roads, but they don't actually like, And so I hear things like bounce house, and I'm like, oh man, I kind of shake my head. I'm like, okay, it needs to get done, I guess. I mean, you don't want bounce houses collapsing on people, but
I think that's, yeah, you're right. Like, why is the state in the game of regulating bounce houses? But we were there at that ag conference today, and that guy had, edited that video of that guy holding the trampoline down and the trampoline taking off in the air. And I guess that's why, like, you don't want 5-year kids jumping on the bounce house and it going to Kansas from Kentucky. So
yeah, that's funny.
there's got to be regulation and everything, I guess.
Yeah, I
There's
suppose.
stupid people in the world, Clayton.
I know. But the USDA regulating bounce houses, like they're yeah, I just shake my head. It's okay. Like, if someone's gonna regulate that, and that's the other thing, we can talk about that. It's like that the fact that that's something that's shoved on the Department of Agriculture is like, okay, well, come on, like that's not how this would work. Which the USDA is absolutely massive in terms of like U.S. government, like
Huge.
huge in the like just the amount of people and resource intensive departments in the U.S. government. Like the USDA is super high up there, so it does make sense. Like there is just probably more wiggle room in there than some other departments because if you create a temporary department in the government, it's never going to be temporary. It'll just exist forever. And so I'm sure they're like, it doesn't make sense. We don't need a bounce house regulatory authority. The USDA just has time for that.
That's right.
The intern can do it.
If you look at um the transition of power down, like if you lost the president, you lost the vice president, you lost the secretary of state, you lost the Department of Defense. When you look at it, the agriculture commissioner at the federal level is very high. Like
Yeah.
Vilsack is like, I don't know what he is, sixth or seventh from the very top of the chain of command. So yeah, the USDA is a humongous agency, and the person that's leading it wields an extraordinary amount of power
Oh yeah.
throughout lots of industries. Not only just when you think of USDA, you think of just farming, but it's energy, it's restaurants,
Yeah.
it encompasses so many things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Then you start getting into like you start thinking about conservation stuff, NRCS. Like national parks, I believe is its own federal department, but like US forest lands are like any national forest under USDA. So that's all of your logging, uh block land management or Bureau of Land Management, BLM land. Like that's all managed by USDA. I mean, it is at like every square inch of this country, the USDA has some sort of place to be. It's absolutely crazy. So that's just a little bit about regulatory body. I don't know too much about it, and a lot of people and that's the other thing is it's so big. You can have so many different opinions about an agency like that because there's like, you've got some people who are all for like NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Council or whatever, um, and water right. Like there's so many departments under that. There's so many things to be frustrated with or appreciative of. Some people are like, oh man, USDA did this study. It was awesome. It's so cool to see that. But then other people are like, well, the USDA did this regulatory thing that's just really made my life as a farmer way harder. And it's just very, very complicated.
That's right. I mean, it's a humongous agency, and it's got its tentacles and everything. And I mean, it can be frustrating. We need them too, though. And there is, like, what I've found out over the course of the last several years is there is a lot of very hardworking individuals inside of that agency,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not always there to. It seems like when we look at it as a producer, if you're a restaurant owner, you look like, or you feel like maybe they're always in your hair and getting in your business, but there is a place for them. So,
Yeah,
they're not all bad.
agreed. Just like how not everyone at John Deere is bad, despite all the things I say about them, and not everyone,
Yeah,
you know. And that's where we have to and that's the issue we've faced in agriculture, and that's why I started my business. Is like there's just no nuance in the conversation about anything that goes on. I talked about this a few weeks ago on the podcast, but there's so many issues that we say are black and white or this and that. It's like, well, actually, 90% of the issues that people tout as very black and white issues, there's actually this huge gray area in the middle of a bunch of really hardworking people who might not fall on either side or are in different varying levels of that scale that we just throw out the window because we say this is right or this is wrong. And it's like, well, actually, there's this guy over here who's doing everything right in his book and what needs to be done there, but according to your view, it's wrong. You look at a government agency like the USDA, like, well, obviously there's going to be large groups of people who say you are the worst. How dare you do that? There's going to be large groups of people like probably you work for the USDA. It's like, hey, like this is something we need to do and needs to be done. And we love it. And there's that middle ground. It's like, hey, people are people. They're not perfect. They will mess up without a doubt. Why don't we focus a little more on the good things and the great things and have a nuanced conversation about the hard things instead of just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. That's the thing, like it is very easy to be critical of them, but they do perform, a very necessary task in regulating our industry as a whole, making sure the country has clean water, making sure that we aren't overpolluting, making sure we are successfully able to get the crops to market, the commodities to market that need to go to market. So ultimately, as a country, we can feel secure in our ability to feed ourselves each and
Hmm.
every day. So they perform a huge task. It's very easy to be critical of them, but
Yeah. Not to mention, I was actually talking to a young guy. His name is Spencer. He's a statistician for the USDA, and so his job is to basically crunch a heck of a lot of numbers and make a heck of a lot of graphs. There's so much research that an organization like that can put out that a private institution could only do if it was making them a profit in some capacity. Like they couldn't just spend that research on stuff like, there's a couple companies that do stuff like that, and I'm sure there's biases within USDA, but there is just a vast like, hey, you want a nationwide view of how agriculture is doing? There's probably a USDA study on that. I mean, I have USDA stats and articles downloaded on my computer that I use for reference sometimes when I'm writing LinkedIn posts or Instagram posts, or I need to know what I'm talking about. I look at some of the studies they've done because at the very least, it's a wide survey of a lot of things going on that I wouldn't be able to get anywhere else without an organization like that or department like that of that scale that is supposed to be quote unquote a little unbiased. And so things like that, I'm like, heck yeah, like we need it, you know. I'm not saying we need more government. I'm just saying it's really nice. Appreciate it.
it is, and people love to hate the USDA and they always feel like, oh, they're trying to skew our markets. But no, they are honestly trying to put together a set of numbers that the industry can operate off of and it be correct. And to be honest, they're the envy of the world. So you have, Russia has an ag service, China has an ag service. Uh, you know, every country has something similar to the USDA, but none of them have quality information. And I'm not saying every study and statistic that the USDA puts out is great or relevant or accurate. But if you're trying to build a business and you need agriculture information and statistics to be able to put together a model so you can show your finance officer, hey, look, this business will work, and here's the stats that prove it. You've got a pretty reliable agency there in the USDA that provides to the best of their ability, numbers that accurately reflect that part of the industry. So that is a huge benefit in our developed country that some countries, like China, you don't know if you're getting the correct information. You're probably not even getting close to the correct information because they skew everything.
Hmm.
Versus the USDA who tries to accurately, and I know everybody's going to say, that's not true. They try to screw us on the grain market. I actually think that they're trying to provide an accurate number for the grain market. It just always seems like you're chasing the market around when in reality they're not trying to skew it. It's just hard to get a handle on a nationwide crop.
Yeah. And yeah, like you also have to remember what incentive would an organization like that have to skew numbers
Yeah, I
other
mean
than
it's
to bolster international appeal, quote unquote. But like we as a country are a major agriculture exporter. Like we have a lot of money coming in. And so twisting and lying about numbers and not being able to meet a demand or be able to, be able to oversupply, like we don't want that. Like the USDA's function in a larger US and world economy needs to be as accurate as it can, because, like, if we're inflating numbers, like, say the USDA came out with a study saying, hey, we overproduce X amount in corn or soy this year, and then all of a sudden we go to market and the world's like, oh, well, we actually should be buying from the US because we're competing with Brazil. It's like, well, Brazil has a bad year. We need to buy from the US. Well, the US can't keep up supply. There's no reason to conflate numbers other than negligence. It's not going to be like purposeful, like, let's do this, to make ourselves seem better or to screw people over. It's like, hey, we need to come out the closest we can get to accurate numbers, but everyone across the country grows different type of crop in different conditions, and you can't, like, the law of averages says this is as close as going to get. Like, unless
Yeah,
you want, one in X amount of people in agriculture to be working for the USDA, which you don't. It's just, yeah.
you
Sorry,
know,
I'm just ranting, guys.
just to give you a little idea of like how that is, like how a number is came up with by the USDA. Of course, after everything's sold out of a current year, of course they have pretty decent accurate information because they can go look and see what was marketed by each individual or whatever sold at each granary. But they have a group of individuals basically in every ag producing area in the country that submits a report, on a monthly or quarterly basis, and they take those numbers and punch them and come up with a hard number. So for them to skew the number, it would take a massive conspiracy, I guess you would say. You would have to go to all these different individuals and have them personally skew their number of their personal county or region that they're reporting on. So, we're talking about hundreds of individuals that are submitting reports, possibly weekly, every or quarterly to the USDA. They're not intentionally skewing the numbers. And what should really tell you that this is true is there is also private companies that are providing these numbers as well. And if you look, like StoneX is one, their number will always be right around what the USDA is projecting. So, private businesses and the USDA aren't going to be in line, you know, if they're not both fairly accurate.
Mm.
So that tells you that the USDA is performing the task it's designed to perform. It's not there to screw your commodity market up.
Yeah. Uh, Anyways, that's all I gotta say about the USDA. I didn't intend for that to be a conversation entirely about the USDA. But like that, man, that is something that's kind of in the background of every conversation in some form of agriculture. I mean, you look at any part of the ag industry, there's probably some form of USDA involvement somewhere in there. It's just how much of a capacity are they involved in it. So it's kind of like it's a shadow to the entire industry of research, stats, policy, all these different things that help play into what agriculture is. And like the USDA does have a pretty big bearing on, the way the farm industry in the U.S. is going to move towards or do things like that, because it's a long time, it's a decade-long process for things to change, but they do have the ability to put policy forward to change things for the better or for the worse. I mean, Earl Butz was the director of the USDA decades ago, and he was famously said, "Get big or get out." That's where that saying comes from. And we look at today's market. It's like, well, it's not everywhere, but it's more or less has gone that way. To stay afloat, you are getting bigger, or you're getting out. The guys who say I don't want to get bigger are typically selling or leasing their
Yeah,
land. And that's something when someone says that in the 70s and the 80s. We had the 80s farm crisis. Like, oh well, yeah, why would that ever happen? We look now, 40 years later, it's like, oh sheesh, like fulfillment of prophecy right there. It's just,
sure.
it, and that's how government works. It's just something, whenever someone wants to change something and they want to do it through government, I'm like, you better anticipate doing, there's a certain ag advocate right now running for a Senate position. It's like, I understand you want to do good and great things for agriculture, but there's a sense of urgency that needs to be there. It's like, hey, like 20 to 30 years of policy is important. I'm glad there's people who are there to do that. I'm not going to be that guy because I think we have much more pressing issues in front of us. We don't have 10 to 30 years to wait for people to learn more about their food. Like, we have a generation that yesterday needs to know about where all this stuff came from. And with the internet. There's no reason that can't be done. And so whenever I see, there's people who should be in government, there's people who should not be in government. People who want to create a lot of change really quickly should not go into government.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. And then Clayton, we were riding up here today, this morning early, and we were just talking about advocacy and politics, and just in the overall conversation. And he was showing me the clip of somebody running today, and on the, or did you say on the Senate side? And I'm not going to mention their name; that is irrelevant. But their voice was shrill, and it was hard to listen to, and like it just made you wanted to turn away. I mean, and that's the type of advocacy I don't think we want to do, and that's
Yeah.
not good for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I think the ag industry, especially because it comes from the other side, we talked about this on the way up. We are reactive marketers and reactive responders. We are not active people. It's someone pokes at us, we poke back like you poked at a bear. It's not forward. It's not us saying, oh, like, let's come up with our own thing. Let's do our own thing. People catch on eventually. It's like, no, someone did something. We need to have a response to that. And when we just do that for a couple decades, well, no one takes us seriously anymore because all we are doing is arguing. And that's where politics has gotten to across the board, across the aisle. No matter which side you're on, it has just evolved, even within parties, to just literally people pointing fingers and accusing each other of things and just screaming at this point. And I'm like, I look at the wider country and I was like, has this done us any good? Has this gotten us any farther forward as a country, as a whole? It's like, no, you all are still in your own little silos thinking about your own little things all the time. And if we keep doing that, well, you just continue to create division. There's no progress there. And if agriculture has any stance or any chance of standing in front of an entire country and saying, hey, things are skewed, things are wrong, we need to be taken more seriously, we need to have some serious conversations about it, it's not going to be by calling other people idiots. It's not going to be calling out the Chinese government for buying farmland. Like that's not getting us anywhere, guys. So we need to take a step back and look and say, hey, like, there is a wider society that we need to be concerned about, and if we're too busy bickering with a couple of people who are arguing with us about certain topics, well, we're not going to get anywhere. We need to be looking at everyone and saying, okay, well, rather than arguing with them, I'm going to have a conversation with this person over here who might actually be willing to listen to me because I'm not arguing with them. If you argue with people, they want to argue back and win. If you talk with people, they want to like listen to you and have a conversation. We don't have conversations like that in 2024 now. It's like we have conversations where I go into it saying, no, I know what's right and no one's going to change my mind. We need to stop that. We need to be an industry full of people who are willing to listen and willing to have conversations and willing to acknowledge, hey, we're not perfect. We can change things and not just build these hills we have to die on. There are hills we should die on, but not all of them are hills to die on.
Yeah,
Tillage, no till, you don't need to die on that hill. You can disagree with someone and move on and still be friends with them. Stuff like that. Like, we have to add some nuance, add some tactfulness into it because we need to be unified first of all in a voice of these things. And it's just
for sure. When we were listening to that little TikTok clip this morning or whatever, and I was sitting there and thinking, if I wasn't a part of agriculture, and I'm just thinking also just as being a part of agriculture, but either way, if I didn't care about agriculture, or if I'm in the position I am, I do care about agriculture. If I heard this person talking at me, basically screaming at me, trying to get her position across, all I heard was screaming. And it automatically turned me, I didn't like, it made me automatically dislike all farmers.
yeah, it was like, why would I listen to you? There's an excellent video that I saw the other day. I don't know if any of you guys have listened to Jelly Roll. Do you know who Jelly Roll is?
I don't. No.
He is this former drug dealer,
Oh,
tattooed
yes.
all up,
I know exactly.
turned into this
yeah.
phenomenal country artist that the entire country loves. So he's a former drug dealer, and he goes on Capitol Hill last week and testifies
in a Senate hearing,
to Senate hearing saying, hey, we got to do something about this fentanyl crisis.
That was a phenomenal speech. I did see that.
Oh my gosh. He could have come in and he said, you guys are doing a horrible job. Like, look at what it did to my life. Look what it's done to my friend's life. No, he goes in very well composed and he says, this is the problem we are facing. I have been a part of this problem in the past. I have seen friends die, and he tells a story and he does it super gently, and he goes on and focuses on this is the actual issue that's at hand here, and this is what we need to be thinking about to do it. He's not pointing fingers saying, no, you guys suck. He's pointing and saying, hey, we have a problem. Here's my story. Let's push forward together. And it was so well done that I was just like, why can this former drug dealer who's a massive country star now put together a better argument for like better drug regulations and cracking down on the cartel than anyone in our U.S. government can?
This
This
guy's
guy,
got face tats.
I know, like, and he's awesome. Like, you listen to him, like, he was on Joe Rogan. You listen to that Joe Rogan podcast. He's like a teddy bear. He's just turning. I was like, man, you're just cool to listen to. You
Oh,
know,
he's super.
he talks about his daughter a ton in the
Oh,
speech. He was like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. Like,
oh, it like I just saw a couple second clip of it, and then I went out. I didn't realize what the guy's name was, but yeah, I mean, he was very well put together, and I just thought the speech was great, or the hearing was phenomenal. He he had me looking for change, you
yeah.
know.
And he also didn't throw a pity party either. He wasn't like, oh, we're the 1%. Oh, no farms, no food. Like, that's the other thing.
Hold on, we got talking about that this morning.
We if agriculture is gonna and I'm gonna offend some people here. I don't care. Whatever. I'm fine with offending people. I've clearly made that clear. If we are gonna constantly say, oh man, like farmers have it so bad, ranchers have it so
We're the
bad.
1% feeding the 100% or
You
the
know,
99.
it's like a dog begging for scraps. It's like, yeah, you might throw a bone every once in a while, but it's like, hey, like you're being a little rude and disrespectful. Or like agriculture has a way better standing than I think a lot of people do. Like the fact that people own land at all, like in the agriculture community, is like better than honestly a lot of people in their 20s and 30s who will ever have a chance at. It's like, okay, yes, it is hard. Yes, it is underrepresented. Yes, profit margins are thin. Yes, it is hard to compete. It's hard to pay for all the inputs. It's hard to ask for more debt when it's like, how the heck am I going to pay for all this? All very real issues and pressing. It's not solving a problem. It's
Who likes a
saying,
whiner?
yeah, it's not, it's complaining about a problem but not offering a solution. And I've been very lucky to work for some people in the past who pretty much every single boss I've had my entire life has said, if you are going to complain about a problem, come to me with a solution, or at least have a rough idea of what we could do about it. And you can be wrong, that's okay, but just try, like, apply your brain to something. Just try a little bit to solve the problem on your own. And there's an independent thinking mindset that I think everyone in agriculture has to have, because that is how we function. That is how you have to function. Like if you are a farmer, you are a rancher, you have to problem solve. I remember specifically the farmer I used to work for told me my favorite part about my job is always doing something different every single day. No day is ever the same on the farm. And that's awesome. Great. Now let's take that brilliant mindset that all of society should have, and let's put that towards all the problems we're facing. And that's where advocacy is supposed to be, but it's just turned into, look at me, I need help. It's like,
Whining.
yeah, like
No,
we,
no,
yeah,
nobody wants to hear a whiner. Nobody wants to hear a complainer. And this is, Clayton and I, we agree on a whole lot. So if you don't agree with us here, hey, we're sorry about this. But
it's okay.
like,
We can disagree and still respect each other, guys. Like that's something that we can do.
if I'm watching farm social media or any social media for that matter, but let's talk farm social media right now, and somebody gets on there and they say we're the 1% feeding the 100. There's 55 of us committing suicide a day. Our land is expensive, our profit margins are thin. I instantly flip it off. Because why? Because that's not solving problems. That's just bitching or whining about your situation. And every industry in America and every industry worldwide has a set of struggles. And
Yeah,
each generation has its own specific set of struggles. Yes, right now land is expensive. Yes, right now interest rates are high. You know,
yeah,
we're dry in some areas, but what you have to do as a producer and as a business owner is adapt and overcome those obstacles against your business and your life. I mean,
yeah,
ultimately, you have to be a good business owner or to be a good farmer, you have to learn to adapt and overcome all these different scenarios. In any business that you
yeah,
own, media business, farming business, if you're in the insurance business, if you're a doctor, you're going to have things that come against you that cut into your ability to
Mm-hmm.
successfully earn a profit or make a living. And it's just another obstacle in your life that
Yeah.
you have to learn to overcome.
Guys, there are other business owners out there, non-agriculture, that face those same problems every single day. There are, it's like crazy stats. Like 1 in 10 of every small business started doesn't make it past like 10 years. Like the statistics were crazy for people starting their own business. There are millions of people who do face maybe not the exact same, but do face struggles every single day. And I'm telling you that if I was scrolling on social media and they were like, buy my product because my business is really struggling right now, I would be like, hey, I don't really want to buy your product for anymore. It's like figure it out, keep going, and that's what people do. And that's the beauty of agriculture is it's a resilient business. And we have, there's a fear of like I don't want to lose my century farm that has been in my family for 5 generations now. It's like, yeah, I 100% agree with you, but you guys didn't get 100 years down the road because it was easy. You got 100 years down the road because for generations there has been a ton of sweat and grit put in to keep it going. And so you can either be the generation that says, government, do something about it, society, do something about it, or you can be the person that says, I'm going to do something about it, keep this going. And I think that's what sets apart, the forward thinkers and the traditionalists in the industry is the forward thinkers are saying, hey, this is my job, this is my livelihood, this is my legacy. I'm going to protect it and I'm going to do my part in that. And there's people who say, well, this is how it's always been. We just need to keep it the way it always has been and it'll be okay.
I
Well,
think that's where you're going to find a complete failure at the end. Is when you just said, "Hey, we've been great for 100 years in our business, just doing it the way we've always done it." Okay, but as time goes, you're going to have different situations arise that you didn't have 20 years ago. Like 20
uh-huh.
years ago, we weren't actively competing on the world market, where now a lot of our grain is exported. We're actively competing against farmers from around the world.
Hmm.
And the things that worked on your farm for the last 75 years are not going to work now. So you have to come up with innovative solutions to overcome each of these obstacles. All right, so Clayton started a business, Atlas Media Solutions. Was anybody promising a profit for him right out of the gate? Or is anybody promising him a chance to be successful right out of the gate? No. He has to take risk to be involved in his industry. And is there a possibility that the business fails?
Hmm.
Yes, there is. I don't hear him whining about it and saying, "Oh,
Well, go
I
talk to
wonder
my
how many
go.
media guys are going to commit suicide this week."
Yeah, you could go talk to my wife. She hears all that stuff. It's not easy, guys. But like, and we don't say this to be like, oh, like get smart or get it. Like, no, that's not what we're trying to say. It's like I say all these things because I really care about this industry, and I don't want to see any more family farms that have been around for a century go under. Like I was very blessed to work for a multi-generational family farm as a farmhand, and it was literally just three of us working every day, and it was awesome. It was so cool. Like I want that to exist for generations to come. But that's not going to exist for generations to come if we're sitting around twiddling our thumbs saying, "Help me, help me." Like our life is so hard. Like if you keep saying things like that, like no one's coming. No one's coming to help the people who want to be helped but aren't willing to actually help themselves. And I don't remember who said that, but I've heard that like 100 times in some other industry at some point. Like, let's push. Like, let's just push boundaries, guys. Like, do like, and that's why social media has also been really cool. It's like instead of looking at a bunch of people who could complain about all the problems, there are people who are like, yeah, no one knows anything about farming. No one know like, farm margins are tight. They're like, okay, I'm gonna start my own business or I'm gonna advocate for agriculture online. There are people out there who have said, this is a problem. I'm gonna do something about it. And to them, more power to you. Keep going. That's awesome. We love that. And if you're looking at it as like, man, I could never be like them, yes, you can. Just like go. Like the world is wonderful and if you live in America, I tell people this all the time. The worst thing that could happen is you go get a normal job with health insurance and a 401k plan. We like I think people think I'm wrong when I say this. There are jobs everywhere. You just have to be willing to work.
That's right.
Like you could, the farm could fail. You could take that risk, and that sucks. You know what? You're not going to starve. We
That's
live,
right.
you have the opportunity to go try new things and take on more risk and take adventures. And the beauty of having an established farm operation is, hey, you could do that and possibly fail and still come back and survive a few more years and figure it out again. You've got time. It's not like a tomorrow it's all going to go under. It's like, no, you can experiment with direct to consumer for years. You could start a side business. Use your access to equipment to start some sort of land management, excavation. Like you can use farm and heavy equipment to do a lot of things that other people would have to scrape by on loans to do, but you have access to this capital and this equipment to do stuff. It's like, guys, the opportunities are there. Just think a little.
Yeah, you just got to be outside the box thinker. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I mean, take this as a challenge and look how you can diversify your operation or your business. If we're just talking about businesses in general, if you have one stream of revenue, is that better? Or if you have multiple streams of revenue? So if one's a little thin during a certain quarter, then the other one maybe picks up and is a little thicker, and it gets you through those tough periods.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody said that business or farming in a completely modernized society is going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of people out there that want to be in the position you're in, no matter what position that is. There's people that are highly competitive, highly driven, that are looking to take your spot. So what
Yeah,
you
I'm
have,
one of them. If any of you are getting rid of farmland, I've been looking at farmland prices, and it is not looking good for my future as a farmer. So I'm taking donations.
there's, but what I'm saying is there's just there is people out there willing to compete against you and that are going to compete against you. That should make you want to be even more competitive. It should make you want to beat them back.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, you have to open your mind up, stop the complaining, and look to problem solving and not whining. And like, I don't want to get on the soapbox here, but
I
like,
think we stepped up on our soapboxes a while ago, and we have not gotten down
yeah,
yet.
yeah, but just, I mean, yeah, look at the opportunities that you have around you. Look and see what you like to do and diversify your business towards that. And I think it will help you be more successful. And then you can quit, saying, "Oh, woe is me."
Yeah. And there's people who have done it, guys. It's not like oh man, it's impossible. It's like people have done it and people have failed, and that's just the reality of life. It's okay. Like, yeah, we're just gonna keep ranting. People are gonna be so mad at us. Like, how dare you tell me to do this? And like, yeah, it's like fine. Like, yeah, it's okay. And the reality, like I know there's people who listen to this who don't literally might not actually have time. Like I know guys, I know one man very particular who will wake up at 7 in the morning. He'll spend an hour with his family, and then he will spend the rest of the day working. He will come home for dinner, and after dinner is over, he will go out and feed cows until 10 o'clock at night, every
Yeah.
single night. That man does not have enough time to be hands-on starting another business. He also somehow in there does manage to manage his county farm bureau. He's in charge of all that. He also managed to do a bunch of stuff for his church. He also has somehow managed to get some beef sold directly to consumers while also doing all commodity stuff. And you know what? You know how he does that? He sits in the tractor and he makes phone calls while he's working.
Yeah.
It can be done. That man works harder than anyone else I know. It is a lot of work for him, and his biggest problem is not that he can't it's just finding the people to do it. He has a labor problem. It's not a business problem. So guys, the resources out there, and especially you guys who have planting and harvest seasons, man, you can do a heck of a lot on your phone. We go to these conferences, and to be totally honest, the past two conferences we've been to recently has been like 90% grain marketing talk, which goes straight over the head of a guy who doesn't own any grain. I sit on my phone and I send emails. I do research. I find companies to reach out to. I text people. I do all the work that I don't do when I'm home because I don't want to. When I'm at a conference and I don't have anything else to do. um, Guys, like, and once again, we say all this not to be critical and say everyone's the worst. Like, we need to just be pushing forward for the industry as a whole. And like, I don't want to, I'm just going to be blunt. You don't want to be left behind if that's what it comes to. The reality is you will be left behind if you aren't thinking a few years ahead. You aren't doing things like that. Like it is, this is just life, guys. It doesn't stop for any of us. Time will continue to march on until every single one of us rolls over in our grave. So you have the opportunity to say, I'm okay with the way my life is and keeping it going. And that's fine for some people. And if you can continue to maintain and run a profitable operation and cover your expenses, cover your bills, and maybe take a vacation every once in a while, that is awesome. Don't feel like you have to go do more than you have to. But if you are going to sit there and complain about a problem that everyone else around you has also experienced in some capacity and you're not going to do anything about it, well, I don't want to follow you on social media.
I
I
mean,
want to see you get to work and solve that problem because who knows the ideas you could have that I don't have. Like we need people to be thought leaders and be pushing these things forward because I can't do it all. Neil can't do it all. Not all the other people who are trying to push this industry forward can do it all. We've got to be just pushing boundaries a little, one step at a time and just trying things.
yeah, I mean,
Honestly.
I think that is I mean, yeah, you're right. All of us are limited in time and capacity that we have to do things. But if we just sit here and like, say are in a beef operation or we're in a corn and beans operation, and we know the profit margins are super thin right now, and it doesn't look like a fast way out. So we know for the next couple of years coming here that we're going to have extremely thin margins, barring a black swan event that causes our grain or beef market to shoot to the moon. We shouldn't wait on that to happen. We should be looking to diversify and looking at other ways that we can bring revenue onto our farms and ranches. And, you know, I mean, yeah, it maybe is not exactly what you want to do, but like I said, every generation has a different obstacle to overcome. That's our obstacle currently. The model that has always worked the last 100 years in American agriculture, to me, is beginning or has already failed and needs revitalization through diversity.
Yeah.
And
To anyone who does traditional grain, if there is one thing I've picked up from all these meetings I've gone to, guys, Brazil in South America is an absolute
they're a
powerhouse when it
juggernaut.
comes to soybeans and corn. And even starting like I think they're doing cotton now too.
Cotton.
Guys, those are like some of our biggest crops in the US. And if our and not to mention China's population having in the next couple decades. Guys, China is the largest buyer of corn in the world. They're the largest buyer of pretty much any food product in the world right now. That demand is starting to decline. And
Plummet.
the people who are supporting that demand now, it has been South America taking shares of that. So if you think that you are going to be seeing $7 corn in the next decade, I don't see any reality unless we put corn in every single thing we possibly can produce where that corn price is going to reach those heights again. Maybe it'll swing up again, but we are not like if you think corn and soy are going to be the kings forever, I can't I do not look at my future in 30 years and see the Midwest just being covered in corn and soybeans because our US population, if that's what we have to grow for in the future, because we have a way more competitive global market, like we don't need that much corn and soy in the US. Like it's yeah, that's getting into doomsday stuff because I'm not qualified on all that.
No,
But
but you're right. I mean, we're seeing that Brazil just brings more land to the table each and every
they are
year.
not afraid to clear cut the rainforest,
They're
guys.
not, and they're very and they're refining their distribution, and they're refining their ports, and they're refining their ability to produce. So they're producing more. Like, I don't know how many million metric tons each year Brazil steps up, but it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll never ever produce the amount of grain that they can produce out of that country.
Yeah,
And
literally, one of the guys today was like, if you think we're ever going to produce more soybeans than Brazil in our lifetime, you're wrong.
yeah, I mean, our land keeps declining and their land keeps going up, and their farming practices are getting better each year. And on top of all that, they can produce 3 crops. We can
Mm-hmm.
produce one, maybe two if
Yeah.
you're in the right geography. But very few areas in the United States allow you to produce more than one crop. Well, down there in Brazil, they're producing three, you know. like, and on top of all that, we're our own worst enemy. Our trendline yields, our ability to grow corn and soy is going up exponentially every year because we've refined our practices. So not only is Brazil producing more, the United States is producing more with less. And you've got all this grain that's just, it's basically a glut of supply. Well, what happens if there's a glut? The price is going to go down.
Yeah, I was literally just listening to. I just wrapped up another book. I'm going to do a book review of soon. It's all about the Dust Bowl, and in this book, so World War I happens. Government says grow more wheat, grow more wheat. All these producers in the wheat belt say cut up the grass, put more wheat in. We got to make money. So wheat's super high. The world's in super high demand of wheat. World War I finishes. Great Depression hits. Demand just rapidly declines. There was a point where there was just mountains of wheat, just piles upon piles of wheat at grain elevators sitting out for years because no one would buy it because the prices were so bad and there was such an overproduction of it that they literally ran out of places to store all the overflow. They were starting to burn it for heat because there was so much of it. That happened less than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Guys, it can happen again.
I think it's already happened personally. I mean, I think we've already got such a supply of corn right now that, I mean, you've seen corn hit the high $4 mark, and you're probably during the course of this year going to continue to see it slide down. I mean, I hate to say where it could go, but lower than what we are currently. So, like, we're already at the cost of production now. And if we keep going down the slippery slope, we're going to be below the cost of production. So what's your farmer going to do? Well, it's got to come up with an alternate form of revenue from somewhere. I don't know where you're going to bring that alternate form of revenue. That's for you to decide. But start doing the hard work now so that you have a backup plan. So 2 or 3 years out from this, we're at the point now where we're just trying to preserve equity in our farm. We are not in the stage, like I heard it said today. One of the guys that was up there talking was like, look, now is not the time to focus on profits. Now is the time to preserve equity. You're just trying to lose the least amount you can lose. And that's hard to hear, but it's the reality that we're living in. And is me whining to you on this podcast or to Clayton, woe is me, is that going to do anything to solve my problem?
No.
No, it's not. So going forward, what are we going to do to solve these challenges? Well, uh, we're going to have to be visionary thinkers, like Clayton's talking about. You're going to have to be creative in how how are you going to run your business the next 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
And are you only going to focus on the traditional avenues that you've been involved in, or are you going to look to maybe a landscaping crew,
Mm-hmm.
or are you going to mow the sides of the road on a state mowing contract? Or use your track hoe to clean out a ditch for the county. I mean, look at all these different things. You have lots of assets. Use them to the best of your ability to bring revenue into your farm.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, your neighbor is going to wind up buying you out.
Yeah.
That's the sad reality of it. Because just like Clayton said, we want to see all these family farms survive and thrive, but just sitting back and hoping is not going to allow them to do that. It's going to take some creative thinking,
Yeah.
and it's going to take some pain and effort on each individual's, that are running these operations. It's going to take some pain to get to the point we need to be, so we're not totally dependent on just the one commodity that we've been successful with the last 25 or 100 years of our operation, or however long it's been going.
Yeah. And and we talk literally every single time I'm on the podcast, or anytime Neil and I talk on a podcast, we will always say, hey, that direct to consumer market is going to grow. And there's some real opportunity. The groundwork has already been laid by a lot of really awesome operations that have been doing this for 5 to 10 years sometimes now. guys, as someone who does travel a lot, as someone who grew up on the West Coast, there is a growing market and desire for people to buy more food direct. It is growing. It's getting easier. I think regulations are probably going to maybe not be eased, but at least be a little easier to jump through hoops to be able to sell produce and livestock directly to consumers, because the urban consumer base has said this is something we desire. Whether they desire it for a good reason or a bad reason, there is a growing demand for that. And there's already, it's not, I'm not saying it's easy, it is labor intensive, but if you have any sort of livestock or animals, like if you can get that meat processed by a USDA inspected facility, I'd say spend some time taking risk on doing that. I don't even own cows, and I'm looking at, hey, who are some wholesale buyers that I can buy cattle from to start doing some direct to consumer beef, because I love my direct to consumer beef that I get from my guy. I want my friends to experience that.
Sure.
I want people, you guys on the internet, to experience that, because I love the quality beef that I get from the guy I buy cows from. It's awesome. And I want more of that. And guys, so that market is growing, and the beauty of the internet and continuing to spread awareness about all this stuff. I think that buyer base is going to continue to expand. But even then, like Neil said, like I said, like, hey, you have access to capital and equipment that, even if it's not like, hey, I'm going to see an immediate return, you have access to things that the regular Joe Schmo who grew up in the middle of a city and has worked at McDonald's since they were in high school does not have access to. You have a real opportunity to leverage a lot of that stuff. I mean, I know guys who rent out their tractors and rent dump wagons to excavation companies for large, like, river embankment projects. It's just local farmers. They have some big John Deeres that don't get used all summer unless it's planting or harvest. What do? They stick some dump wagons on them, and they use them in really rough terrain. And it's simple, it's easy. You put some machine hours on, but at least you're covering some of the costs of ownership for a machine like that, because that company is going to either have to buy that machine or rent it from someone else. Well, hey, why don't you just be convenient? Say, I live right down the road, come pick up our tractor, rent it for a few days, no problem. You guys have access to that sort of stuff that most people can't even imagine.
You can think too, like there's lots of things that you can produce on your farm that don't necessarily have to be food. You know, you could do soaps or
Oh,
candles
beef
or
tallow big now.
yeah, beef tallow. Like people are rubbing it on their face and on their belly. I mean, I don't know like however creative you can be is how many avenues it opens up for you.
Yeah, and if you
So
think it's a weird idea, I bet you there's 1,000 people online who love that weird idea. Run with it.
that's right.
You can do a lot of things, and also, oh man, I could just go on forever, because I'm a small business minded person. There's a billion things I would love to do and love to build. But like there are just so many avenues you could go down and get creative with, and you can do things that you're passionate about too. If you're like, hey, I love farming, but it's not something I want to pour all my free time into, starting another business that's somewhat farming related, go do something else. It's okay to have hobbies, like I think custom woodworking is fascinating. I think people who can do phenomenal things with these beautiful pieces of wood out of their garage and sell it for thousands of dollars. I'm like, have no desire to learn all the skills to do that, but you could do all of that in an hour or two a weekend over the course of a few months and watch everything on YouTube you could learn about it. And you could at least pay for all the tools to do it at the end of it all. And then the next one, maybe you experiment a little more, sell it. Like there's things like that are just so cool and fun, and you can actually have a good time with and not stress yourself out with, that one day could turn into something that might generate revenue for you. It's just little things like that that you can tack onto your life in a simple way. I'm going to end this podcast because I've been awake for way too long, for about 2 weeks now, and I'm just going to keep rambling about all this stuff. Thank you for listening. I'm sure you guys know where to find Neil. All this stuff will be in the description. We'll see you next week. I'll probably have a book review for you, or I don't know, I might have someone on. Not sure. But yeah, thanks for listening. Talk to you later.
Yep. Thanks.